All right, so this year I'm going to make my life boring. I'm going to design my life to be as boring as possible. Sounds weird, but let me explain why this is the best thing you could do for your life as well. I think the easiest way to explain this concept of engineered boredom is to think about the good old days, right? The days when you were a little kid, uh, your early childhood. What made those days so special and so happy? I think it was just the amount of free time, fluidity, boredom, ability to just go with the flow and let your curiosity take you places, take you on adventures. A little bit about my childhood. I grew up in the 90s in Eastern Europe, in Belarus to be exact. And I grew up in a conservative Christian home. And because we're conservative Christians, my parents thought it was sinful to have a TV in the house. And, that's pretty common even here in the Bible Belt. I know some people that grew up like this, but what made it weird in the 90s in Belarus is that having a TV was almost like a status symbol. Not everybody had cars, but everyone was supposed to have a TV. Any self-respecting household, you had to have a flat screen or maybe at least a colored TV. Thinking back, I remember being pretty embarrassed about that and kind of trying to cover up at school the fact that I did not have TV. Some of my close friends knew, but I was a little bit in the closet about not having a TV at home. And so when I would get a chance to go to my friend's house, especially for a sleepover, maybe to my cousins, I'll just get glued to that screen. I would try to consume as much as I can, just because I remember Pokemon was really popular at the time, and you go to school and all the guys in the morning are talking about the latest episode, and felt a little bit out of the loop in those times. And so I remember after visiting my friends or relatives and watching a movie, I'd be so stimulated by that. Like my mind was on fire. I remember like going to sleep and not being able to sleep because I would just keep replaying what I saw on the screen. And yeah, when you're a kid, your mind is really impressionate. And I think as adults, we don't appreciate how much and how quickly the kids get programmed by what they see on the screen. Remember, sometimes I would get like a snippet of a movie, so I would not get the beginning or an end because I just saw like 10 or 15 minutes. And I would like run different variations of what the beginning and ending for the movie were. It's almost like screenwriting in my mind. I don't know, a little bit weird looking back at it. Anyway, fast forward to today, we live in an attention-based economy, and I'm immensely grateful to my parents for the fact that they engineered an environment for me and for my siblings as well that made mindless consumption impossible, right? They made boredom the default of our lives. And it was annoying at the time, but again, looking back, I'm immensely grateful. Mainly because I now understand that boredom is a trigger for action. Anytime that you're bored, you're not just going to sit there. Let's say you're bored and you're sitting in your bedroom on a chair. You don't have a phone that you can pick up and start mindlessly scrolling. What are you going to do? Well, first you're going to pause, look around, maybe start noticing things around you. Like, hey, my room is not tidy. Maybe I should tidy up. After you do that, well, what's next? Well, I'm so bored. Might as well go to the gym and work out. So boredom is honestly the best trigger for you to get your ass up and start doing things. And for the most part, you'll do things that are useful, maybe run some chores, but then once you get past those, you will still crave novelty. And that's where the real magic happens, because being bored is just a trigger for exploration and a trigger for creativity, and it's a trigger for problem solving in your life. It's a time for reflection. And I think we're really lacking that as society. Sometimes when I think about the stalled progress of today, and what I mean by that is, like, if you look at the 70s in the science community and physics, there's a lot of breakthroughs, right? And you look at the space program the United States had, you look at the space program the Soviets had. Decades ago, it seemed to be so robust and people were so intelligent and able to innovate at a level that we don't see now. Yeah, we get better phones every year. We get some breakthroughs in terms of getting better gadgets and stuff like that. But when you look at the deep physics and the science, there's very little progress that was made. I mean, I think a big reason for that is we're so consumed by our gadgets, we're so consumed by our phones, and we don't understand or not willing to confront the fact that when you sit and mindlessly scroll and consume, you you cannot be truly creative, right? For when you look back at history and the real breakthroughs, it was really wealthy men and women who sat around, had means, had servants, had landowners. They would sit there and try to solve riddles like, how do you find an area under a curve? Next thing you know, the guy solves it and invents calculus, right? You can't invent calculus if you have access to an Instagram reel or TikTok, and anytime you have an impulse towards exploration, you're just suffocated with mindless scrolling. When you scroll, your mind is really operating at a lower frequency. You feel that, right? When you finally put that phone down and that clarity hits, you're like, dude, what did I just do? It's like post-nut clarity in a way. And I might cut that out, might keep that in. So yeah, getting bored is the prerequisite for action. Getting bored is the prerequisite for innovation. Getting bored and engineering your environment to make boredom the default is the goal. Key point to understand is that we live in an attention-based economy. And so if you don't intentionally seek out boredom, there's a real possibility these days that you will never truly experience boredom. And when you start thinking about it a little bit deeper and think about defining characteristics about different generations, let's say Gen Z, Gen Alpha, Millennials, I think the biggest differentiator between different generations is the amount of boredom each generation experienced, especially in their early years, adolescence. Obviously, Millennials had a little bit more, and as you move towards Gen Z, a little bit less, and Gen Alpha, they're born with the screen in their hand. You see iPad babies that just scream, throw tantrums when you pull that iPad from them. So it really makes you wonder, what was it like before millennials, looking back at previous generations? And sometimes you'll just look at shows and TV programs from that time, and you see how different things were. You look at a NYU campus in New York, where there's this lively scene of a lot of young people just going about their day, and there's this energy, there's presence in the air. You see people walking around without headphones in their ears, and they're engaged and alive and present. And you simply don't get that these days. You go to a campus now, college campuses, university campuses, every person has to put in earphones in between walking from class to class, right? By doing that, they're stimulating their brain because they're probably consuming something as they're walking. And, most of the times, like a 10-minute walk, they're closing themselves to an opportunity to have a novel experience, to meet somebody, to have a spontaneous interaction with another person. And I think that's what we do when we don't introduce boredom. We suffocate ourselves with endlessly consuming content. We prevent any opportunity for spontaneity, for novelty, for breaking outside of our normal routine. You see the same thing in the gym. Everyone's plugged in. I think it's actually appropriate for the gym because I do that too. I don't necessarily want to engage at the gym because I just want to get in and out, and I don't really want to listen to the gym music. But in most cases, it does make sense for you to unplug, be present, and be bored. Be bored in public transport. Maybe you'll spark up a conversation with a person next to you. Maybe you'll make a connection. And that connection, it's kind of like the butterfly effect, right? That connection can be life-changing. That could be your spouse. That could be a future spouse. That could be your future coworker, business partner, or a lifelong friend. But putting these blinders on, putting the headphones in, constantly stimulating ourselves with cheap dopamine prevents that from happening. It's a priori impossible to do that when you don't allow and you don't engineer boredom into your life. We really are living like in that movie Idiocracy, where we're devolving into our lower selves. And it's all because we invented machines that are so addicting in terms of dopamine release that they're hijacking our reward system and make it impossible for us to break out of our routines, innovate, allow for possibility of novelty. And so I think most of us subconsciously understand this. I don't think I need to spend a lot of time going into it. You guys heard it a million times. Your mom probably told you to put that phone down. But actionable steps, what can you do? I think the biggest actionable step you can do is to engineer a boring environment in your home. I think that's a start. Maybe your bedroom, right? You probably heard about a study that they did about 2 cookie jars. One was filled with cookies and it was opaque, so you couldn't see through it. The other one was transparent. They've done studies when you put that on your countertop, kitchen countertop, you guessed it, the transparent jar will be a lot more empty over the same time period as the opaque one, because the environment is conducive to people consuming those cookies because they're visible. And so what that means is that your environment has a profound impact on your decision making, and especially impulsive decision making. So engineering boredom in a most practical sense is probably elimination, right? You have to prune things out of your life. And this is January, so a lot of people are revisiting their New Year's resolutions and goals for the year. And really, the best way to introduce new goals is to cut stuff out, because right now you're already spending 24 hours a day. They're booked up, whether you want to admit it or not. You're there on your phone, you're doing stuff, but you're spending that time. So in order to introduce any new habits or any new behaviors, what you must do is cut stuff out, prune stuff out. The low-hanging fruit, social media, low-hanging fruit, mindless scrolling, TikTok, and boredom. Actively embracing boredom. Being bored is not a bad thing. That's the one thing you have to get through your head, is being bored is the desired default mode of being. If we all embrace boredom this year as a positive and not a negative, I think you guys will be surprised in how drastic you can pivot, how quickly it can become an inflection point in your life where you'll be more present, you will find new routines, new communities, new people, and you'll just be more open to life, being more open to let life take its course and live life to the fullest. So let's lock in. This year is the year of boredom. Let's make it a priority. Let's get boring.